Hello, and welcome back to my Q&A video series about the Pandas library in Python. And the question for today is, how do I handle missing values in Pandas? Okay, so let's get an example data set so we can figure out what to do. We'll import pandas as PD, as always. And then our example data set for today is a data set of UFO reported sightings. So UFO equals pd.read CSV, and then bit.ly/UFO reports. Okay. So we'll read in that data into a data frame. And this time let's take a look at the tail, the last 5 rows. Okay. So we see this value NaN. And what does that mean? Is that a string, like it's a color, or what is that? It actually stands for not a number, NaN, but what it means conceptually is a missing value. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that when building the data frame, read CSV detected what it thought was a missing value, and it flagged it with this special NaN, and you'll see why in a bit. Now let's take a look at the source file for a second. This is on GitHub, and here are the last 5 rows. And for instance, in this very last row, we've got ebor, comma, comma, oval, and this is a CSV file, so normally you'd have something between there, but it's missing. And if we compare that to the data frame, we see ebor, NaN, meaning missing, and then oval. Okay? So why is it missing? I don't know. I'd probably guess that there was a web form where people submit these UFO reports, and color, where some of the fields are optional and some are required. Okay? So let's take a look at some methods for working with missing values. The first method I want to show you is called isNull, and it's a data frame method. So we'll say ufo.isNull.tail. Okay? And the way isNull works is it shows a false if something's not null, if something's not missing, and it shows true if it is missing. So you'll see city for these last 5 rows, it's not missing at all, so it's false, 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 false. For colors reported, it's true, 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 false, true, because these ones are missing. Now, it's only because Pandas uses this special value, NaN, that isNull can detect them and produce trues and falses as a result. Now, there's actually a inverse method called notNull, so ufo.notNull.tail, and you'll see that we just get the exact opposite. Now, why are these methods useful, isNull and notNull? Let me show you some examples. So one is a really cool Pandas trick, which is to say ufo.isNull.sum. And what that tells us is the number of missing values in each of the columns. Now, how did that work? I'm going to break it down for you because there's a couple things you have to understand. So let's create a pretend pandas series, so pd.series, and I'll pass it a list of booleans. So I'll say true, false, true. Okay, so that's I've just created this series of 3 booleans. Okay, and if I do .sum, you're thinking, how do you sum booleans? Well, it turns out that when you do that, if you ask Pandas to do a mathematical operation with booleans, it will convert trues to 1 and falses to 0. So it shows you the number of trues. Okay, so that is hinting you towards why this worked, because I'm summing Booleans. But you can tell that I'm summing them at the column level. And why is that? Well, if you think back to a previous video about the axis parameter, sum is doing axis equals 0 by default. And if you remember how the axis works for a mathematical operation, axis 0 is saying, I want you to do the operation in the direction of the 0 axis, the row axis. So I want you to do a sum across the rows, which means down the columns. Okay? So in summary, when we say UFO.isNull.sum, UFO.isNull is creating this data frame of trues and falses, and then the sum is doing column sums of the trues and falses, converting the ones to the trues to 1 and the falses to 0. Okay? So that's why that worked. This is something I do on basically every data frame for every data set I read in, because I want to know where the missing values are. Okay. Now, I want to show you another way to use this isNull method. And isNull, it turns out, is also a series method. So I can say like UFO.city.isNull. Okay. Now, I'm actually going to pass that series of Booleans to this using this bracket notation we've seen many times. I'm passing it a condition that will be used to filter the data frame. And when I do that, we know that there are only 25 missing values in all of this city series. We can see the 25 rows where city is missing. Okay? So that's how we examine a subset of the data frame, by only looking at a portion of the data frame. Okay. All right. So that's some basic functionality, but I haven't answered the question, what should you do about missing values? And there's not one right or wrong answer to that. I can't tell you what to do. I can just give you some options in Pandas for how to do it, and you can decide. Okay? So it really depends upon the data set and the analysis you're doing or problem you're trying to solve. So one common thing to do is to drop missing values. Okay? So let's see some options there. I'm going to say UFO.shape just to see what is the shape of this data frame. 18,241 rows, 5 columns. Now, there's a data frame method called dropNA, and if I say UFO.dropNA, how equals any dot shape. Now, this is the default, so you don't have to put it, but I want to emphasize it. DropNA how equals any. That means I want you to drop a row if any of its values are missing. Okay? So if I do that, we lose almost all of the rows except for about 2,500 rows. Okay? So this is all that it's left. All that's left if we drop rows in which any of the 5 columns have a missing value. Okay? Now I want to mention for a second that there is an in-place parameter here for dropNA, and that is false by default, which is why if I do UFO.shape right now, it hasn't changed from the original. This is just because it's in place equals false, it just temporarily drops it, and then they come right back. Okay? All right. Now let's see how we might modify dropNA. Okay? So now let's try UFO.dropNA how equals all dot shape. And that says only drop a row if all of its values are missing. And we knew that wasn't going to drop any rows because up here we saw that state and time don't have any missing values. So how equals all is not going to make any changes in this case. Okay. So one more option for drop NA is called subset. So UFO.dropNA subset equals, and I'm going to pass it a list of columns to consider. So I'm going to say city and shape reported. And I'm going to say how equals any. Okay. So this is saying I want to drop a row if either city or shape reported are missing. If any of those two are missing for a given row, I want you to drop it. I want you to drop the row, okay? And we're left with about 15,000 rows, okay? Now you can change this. Again, you can change this to how equals all, and that means only drop a row if all of these columns have a missing value for that row. And this time, only 4 rows gets dropped because there were only 4 rows where both city is missing and shape reported is missing. Okay? All right. As always, we're going to end with a bonus, and we're going to talk about filling missing values. And so let's take a look at our good old friend value counts. So UFO bracket shape reported dot value counts. And value counts is saying how many times did this value occur in the shape reported series. So the most common was light. We've got disk, triangle, circle, cigar, rectangle, egg, lots of fun values in here. Okay, so you might be thinking, wait a minute, that doesn't add up to 18,000. And you're right, because by default, missing values are excluded. Okay, so if we say drop NA equals false, we can see that shape reported has those 2,644 missing values, okay? And we saw that up here, those 2,644 missing values, okay? So what if I wanted to fill those in? Maybe I thought, and what to do here depends a lot upon an understanding of your data, but you might think, well, maybe I should fill in the NANs with various. That kind of makes sense for it being missing. So to do that, I'm going to use another method called fill NA. So I'm going to say UFO shape reported dot fill NA value equals various, okay? And I'm going to say in place equals true, which means make the change in place, okay, in the UFO data frame. And I'll run that, and if I rerun the value counts, you'll see that various now has the 333 that were already there, and then all of the missing values were converted to various. Okay? So that's it for today. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, if you want to see more videos like this, please click subscribe. And then let me know in the comments section below if you have a tip for others or a comment or a question. And that's it. So I hope to see you again soon.